The foreclosure notice was still taped to my front door when the courier arrived. Yellow tape, black letters, the kind that screams failure to everyone who passes by. I was sitting on my porch steps, a cardboard box of my mother's china at my feet, watching strangers bid on furniture that had been in my family for 3 generations. The auctioneer's voice carried across the lawn, reducing memories to dollar amounts. Sold for $45. That was my grandmother's rocking chair, the one where she taught me to knit. The courier was an older man in a crisp uniform, completely out of place among the bargain hunters, picking through the remnants of my life. He checked his tablet twice before approaching me. "Ms. Emma Hartley?" I nodded, too exhausted to speak. 23 years old, and I'd already lost everything that mattered. The house, my job at the marketing firm, my engagement to David, though that last one might have been a blessing in disguise. "I need to see identification, please." His tone was formal but not unkind. I fumbled for my wallet, pulling out my driver's license. The address on it, 2847 Willow Lane, would need to be changed soon. By tomorrow, it wouldn't be mine anymore. He studied it carefully, then handed me a leather briefcase that looked older than both of us combined. The brass clasps were tarnished, and the leather was worn soft from years of handling. "This is from the estate of Theodore Hartley. There are specific instructions." He pulled out an envelope, cream-colored and heavy. "You're to read this first, alone, before opening the briefcase." My grandfather. He'd been dead for 2 years, and somehow his timing was still terrible. What could he possibly have left me that would matter now? Probably old stock certificates for companies that went under decades ago, knowing Grandpa Ted's luck with investments. The courier waited until I signed for the delivery, then left without another word. I sat there, briefcase beside me, watching my childhood home being stripped bare. The envelope felt heavy in my hands, heavier than paper should feel. If you're watching this, wondering whether you should stick around for the whole story, I need you to know something. What was in that briefcase changed everything. Not just my financial situation, but everything I thought I knew about my family, about failure, and about the man who raised me after my parents died. If you've ever felt like the world has taken everything from you, like you're standing in the ruins of your life with no way forward, this story is for you. Because sometimes the biggest gifts come disguised as one more loss. Stay with me. I promise you won't see the ending coming. I am Emma, though most people these days just call me that poor Hartley girl. It wasn't always like this. 5 years ago, I was the success story of Millbrook, full scholarship to State University, internship at Morrison Industries lined up, engaged to David Morrison himself, heir to the biggest development company in 3 counties. My family was so proud. Well, what was left of my family? My parents died when I was 8. Car accident on black ice, coming home from their anniversary dinner. One phone call, and suddenly I was an orphan living with grandparents I barely knew. Grandpa Ted and Grandma Rose took me in without hesitation, turning their quiet retirement into an unexpected 3rd act of parenthood. Grandpa Ted was complicated. A retired postal worker who spent 40 years delivering mail in Millbrook, he had a reputation for being both the kindest and most stubborn man in town. He'd give you the shirt off his back if you needed it, but Lord help you if you tried to take advantage of his generosity. He had this way of seeing through people, straight to their core, with those sharp blue eyes that I inherited. "Emma Bear," he'd say. He was the only one who called me that. "The world's going to try to tell you who you are. Don't you listen. You decide that for yourself." Easy to say when you're 8 and your biggest worry is whether you'll get picked for the softball team. Harder when you're 23 and the whole town watches you fail in real time. The trouble started 3 years ago, right after Grandma Rose died. Cancer took her slowly, then all at once. Grandpa Ted was never the same after that. He'd sit in her rocking chair for hours, staring at nothing, forgetting to eat unless I reminded him. The bills started piling up. Medical debt from Grandma's treatment that insurance wouldn't cover. mortgage payments he'd forgotten to make, property taxes that had somehow tripled in 2 years. I dropped out of college to help. Just for a semester, I told myself. David was furious. His mother, Victoria Morrison, was worse. "You're throwing away your future for what?" she'd said at one of her awful dinner parties, loud enough for everyone to hear. "To play nurse to a senile old man who can't even remember your name half the time?" She wasn't entirely wrong about the memory issues. The dementia came on fast after Grandma died, like he'd been holding it at bay for her sake, and finally just let go. Some days he knew exactly who I was. Other days, he'd call me Rose and ask when I was coming home from the market. I got a job at Morrison Industries anyway, accounts payable, nothing glamorous. David pulled strings, of course. His mother hated it, hated me working in their company like I was real employee instead of the charity case dating her son. She made sure everyone knew I was only there because of David. "The Hartley girl," she'd say at board meetings I wasn't supposed to overhear. Sweet enough, I suppose, but hardly Morrison material. David's just going through his rebellion phase. He'll come to his senses. The other employees followed her lead. Whispers in the break room. Conversations that stopped when I walked in. Email chains I was mysteriously left off of. My supervisor, Janet, was Victoria's best friend and made my life hell in small, deniable ways. Performance reviews that were always just slightly below average, projects assigned and then reassigned to someone else, mistakes that weren't mine appearing in my files. But I endured it. For Grandpa Ted, for the house, for the chance to prove Victoria wrong. I worked 60-hour weeks, taking care of Grandpa in the mornings and evenings, working all day, barely sleeping. David helped at first, but his visits became less frequent as his mother's pressure increased. "Maybe we should consider a facility for your grandfather," he suggested one night, not meeting my eyes. "Mom knows a good place." "No." The word came out harder than I intended. "He took care of me when I had no one. I'm not abandoning him now." That was the beginning of the end for us, though I didn't see it then. Grandpa Ted died 6 months ago. Quietly, in his sleep, in the bedroom he'd shared with Grandma Rose for 52 years. I found him that morning, looking peaceful for the first time in years. His funeral was small, postal workers mostly, old-timers who remembered him from his route. The Morrisons didn't attend, though David sent flowers. White roses, Grandma's favorite. He would have known that from better times. The foreclosure proceedings started 2 weeks later. Turns out, Grandpa had taken out a second mortgage to pay for Grandma's treatment, then a third. The house I thought was paid off was underwater by $200,000. Morrison Industries let me go the same week. Restructuring, they called it, though they hired someone new for my position 3 days later. David ended our engagement via text message. I'm not even kidding. 3 years together, and he couldn't even face me. "I think we want different things," he wrote. "Mom's right. We're from different worlds." His mother's influence was all over that message. She'd won. The girl from the wrong side of town, the charity case, the one who couldn't even keep her family home. I'd been properly put in my place. My Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, made things worse. She swooped in after Grandpa's funeral like a vulture, picking through the house for anything valuable. "I told your mother not to marry your father," she said, loading Grandma's silver into her SUV. "Hartley men are all dreamers and failures. Look where it got her. Look where it got you." She took everything worth taking, claiming it was family heirlooms from our side. I was too exhausted to fight her. What did it matter? The bank would own everything soon anyway. The foreclosure auction was scheduled for today. I'd spent the last week packing what little Aunt Patricia had left behind. Photo albums nobody wanted, Grandpa's old postal uniform, a box of letters he'd saved from Grandma when they were courting. Things with no value except to me. That's when I found myself on those porch steps, briefcase in hand, envelope trembling in my fingers. The auctioneer had moved inside. I could hear him in the living room, describing the crown molding Grandpa had installed himself when my mother was born. I opened the envelope. Emma Bear, If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and things have probably gotten bad. I know about the mortgages. I know about the debt. I did what I had to do to give Rose the care she deserved, and I'd do it again. But I also knew this day would come, the day when the vultures would circle and you'd be left standing alone, thinking you'd lost everything. You haven't. The briefcase contains something I've kept hidden for 50 years, not from shame, but from necessity. The combination is your parents' anniversary, 10/14/88. What you find inside will seem impossible at first. You might even be angry with me for keeping it from you, but I had my reasons, Emma Bear, good ones. Before you open it, know this: I've watched you your entire life. You have your mother's heart and your father's courage, but you have something else too. Something that's purely you. A strength that comes from choosing to love even when the world gives you every reason not to. The vultures are going to come for you when they find out. Victoria Morrison especially. She's been sniffing around this secret for years, though she never knew exactly what she was looking for. Don't let her or anyone else tell you what you deserve. You decide that for yourself. I'm sorry for the deception. I'm sorry for the pain you've endured. But sometimes, Emma Bear, the greatest gifts must be hidden until the exact right moment. This is your moment. All my love. Grandpa Ted. P.S. Check the courthouse records for Millbrook, 1952-1954. Start with the mineral rights transfers. Martha at the records office will help you. Tell her Ted's granddaughter needs the Box 47 files. She'll understand. My hands shook as I spun the combination lock. 10/14/88. My parents' anniversary, the night they died. The clasps popped open with a sound like a gunshot in the quiet afternoon. Inside was another envelope, this one yellow with age, marked Confidential Hartley Family Trust. Beneath it, a stack of documents that looked official and old. At the very bottom, wrapped in velvet, was a key I'd never seen before and a small leather journal. I opened the yellow envelope first. The letterhead made me blink twice. Morrison, Blackwood and Associates, attorneys at law, dated 1973. That was before Victoria married into the Morrison family, back when it was David's grandfather's firm. Establishment of Hartley Family Trust. Mineral rights, Blackstone Ridge Properties. Dear Mr. Theodore Hartley. As per our discussion, the trust has been established with the following provisions. 1. All mineral rights for the 847-acre Blackstone Ridge property are to be held in trust for 50 years or until the death of the grantor, whichever comes later. 2. Upon maturation, all rights and accumulated royalties shall transfer to the designated beneficiary. 3. Current beneficiary, Emma Grace Hartley, contingent upon reaching age of majority. 4. Estimated value of untapped resources, as of 1973, $2.4 million. 5. Accumulated royalties from limited extraction rights, to be paid in full upon trust maturation. As discussed, this arrangement shall remain confidential, with documents sealed until conditions are met. The Morrison firm shall continue to manage the trust as agreed, with all records maintained separately from general files. Signed, Charles Morrison, Sr. Charles Morrison, Sr., David's grandfather, the man who built Morrison Industries from nothing. He'd been managing a secret trust for my grandfather? For me? I grabbed the journal next, recognizing Grandpa's careful handwriting. Entry 1, March 15th, 1973. They think I'm just a mailman. Good. Let them think it. Found out today that the land Rose's daddy left us is sitting on the biggest natural gas deposit in the state. Morrison's geological survey confirmed it. Could be worth millions. But I've seen what sudden money does to families. Seen it on my route for 20 years. The fighting, the greed, the way relatives turn into strangers. Rose and I don't need millions. We need each other. We need our daughter to grow up normal, to find love for the right reasons, to know the value of hard work. Set up the trust today. 50 years or until I die. By then, We'll have lived our lives on our own terms. Whatever comes after, that's for Emma. She'll be old enough to handle it right. I flipped through more pages, my eyes catching random entries. Entry 47, December 3rd, 1988. Sarah and Tom died tonight. My baby girl is gone. Emma is alone, scared, asking for her mama. Rose is beside herself. The money doesn't matter anymore. Nothing matters except that little girl upstairs. Maybe this is why we kept it secret. So Emma could grow up without the weight of it. So she could be just Emma, not the secret heiress to a fortune. Entry 198, June 15th, 2010. Victoria Morrison came sniffing around again today. She knows something. Charles Jr. must have let something slip before he died. She's been buying up land all around Blackstone Ridge, trying to force us to sell, offered 3 times what the house is worth. I told her no. She threatened foreclosure if we ever missed a payment. That woman is poison. I see how she looks at Emma when the girl is with David, like Emma's stealing something that belongs to her. Entry 324, February 2nd, 2023, 2 months before he died. The dementia is getting worse. Some days I can't remember breakfast, but I remember this secret clear as day. Funny how the mind works. Rose is gone. I'll be gone soon too. The trust matures on my death. Emma will be okay. She has to be. Victoria's been circling like a shark. She had Janet from her company call about helping with our finances. I may be losing my mind, but I'm not stupid. She knows something's coming. Doesn't know what. Emma thinks she's protecting me, working at that awful company, dating that boy who doesn't deserve her. Truth is, I've been protecting her. From Victoria, from the money, from the burden of knowing. But my time's up. The briefcase is in the attic, behind Rose's wedding dress. The key opens deposit box 47 at First National. Everything Emma needs is there. Martha at the courthouse has copies of everything. She's good people, worked with her daddy. I should have told Emma the truth. But every time I tried, I'd see that 8-year-old girl crying for her parents, and I couldn't add another burden to her shoulders. Maybe that makes me a coward, or maybe it makes me a grandfather who loved her too much to let money define her life. She's strong enough now, stronger than she knows. The world's beaten her down, but she's still standing. That's the Hartley spirit. That's my Emma Bear. The journal slipped from my numb fingers. Behind me, I heard the auctioneer's gavel. Sold. The entire contents of the second floor, lot number 18. My childhood bedroom. Gone. But I barely noticed. My mind was racing, trying to process what I'd just read. Mineral rights, natural gas, millions of dollars that had been sitting there, waiting, while I worked myself to exhaustion, while Grandpa suffered with substandard care, while we lost everything. He'd let it all happen. To protect me from what? From being comfortable? From not having to endure Victoria Morrison's contempt? Anger flared in my chest, hot and sudden. Then just as quickly it faded, because I understood. God help me, I understood exactly why he'd done it. If Victoria had known, if anyone had known, my life would have been different. David would have been pushed to marry me for the money. Victoria would have found ways to get her hands on it. Aunt Patricia would have been even worse. And me? Would I have become someone different? Someone who expected things to be easy, who never learned to fight, who never discovered my own strength? Grandpa Ted had given me something more valuable than money. He'd given me the chance to become myself, completely and authentically, without the weight of wealth shaping my choices. But now I had both. The strength I'd earned and the resources to use it. I picked up the key, noting the number engraved on it, 47, same as the courthouse files. Standing up, briefcase in hand, I walked through the auction crowd, past neighbors pretending not to watch my humiliation, past strangers calculating the value of my loss. "Emma!" A sharp voice cut through the chaos. Victoria Morrison stood by her Mercedes, looking immaculate in cream-colored designer suit. I heard about the foreclosure. Such a shame. Her sympathy was as fake as her smile. She'd probably been counting down to this day. Mrs. Morrison. I kept my voice neutral, the briefcase heavy in my hand. I wanted to make you an offer, she continued, stepping closer. Morrison Industries has been looking to expand our real estate portfolio. I'd be willing to purchase the Blackstone Ridge property from the bank after foreclosure, and, she paused for effect, I might even be able to find you a position at one of our subsidiary companies. Entry level, of course, but it would be a fresh start. Blackstone Ridge. She'd said it so casually, but her eyes were sharp, watching my reaction. She knew something. Not everything, but something. That's very generous, I said carefully. Well, I've always had a soft spot for you, dear, despite everything. The pause was deliberate, a reminder of my failures, my unworthiness of her son. The property is worthless, really. Old farmland, no development potential. But I'm sentimental about Millbrook real estate. I'll give you $20,000 for your cooperation in the transfer. Cash. Today. $20,000 for property rights worth millions. She definitely knew something. I'll think about it, I said, moving past her. Her hand caught my arm, manicured nails digging in slightly. Don't think too long, dear. After tomorrow, you'll have nothing to bargain with. The bank will own everything. I pulled free, meeting her eyes. For the first time in 3 years, I didn't look away first. We'll see. Something flickered in her expression. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. Then it was gone, replaced by her usual cold smile. Yes, I suppose we will. First National Bank was a 10-minute walk from the house. I'd made this walk thousands of times with Grandpa, back when he could still remember the way. The manager, Robert Henley, had gone to school with my father. He looked up from his desk as I entered, his face cycling through surprise, pity, and professional courtesy. Emma, I heard about the house. I'm sorry. If there had been any other way. I need to access a safety deposit box, I interrupted. Number 47. His eyebrows rose. I wasn't aware your grandfather had a box here. It's been paid up for 50 years, I said, showing him the key. Check your records. He typed something into his computer, frowning. Then his face went pale. Yes, box 47, paid through 2024. But Emma, this is in our old vault, the original one. We haven't issued keys for that section in decades. But the box is still valid. Yes, technically, but... He stood up, looking flustered. Follow me. He led me through the bank to a heavy door I'd never noticed before. The original vault, he explained, from when the bank was built in 1898. They kept it for historical purposes, and for the few remaining boxes from that era that were still in use. Box 47 was larger than modern deposit boxes, made of brass that had turned green with age. The key slid in smoothly, like it had been waiting for this moment. Inside were more documents, photographs, and 3 cloth bags that clinked when I moved them. The documents were the real treasure. Geological surveys from 1971, 1983, 1995, and 2018, each one confirming what the first had found. The Blackstone Ridge property sat on one of the largest natural gas deposits in the state. The 2018 survey, which must have been commissioned secretly by Grandpa, estimated the current value at over $300 million. There were contracts, too. Limited extraction agreements with energy companies, all funneling royalties into hidden accounts. Account statements showing 50 years of accumulated payments. The total made my knees weak. $47 million, sitting in trust, waiting for me. The photographs were of the property, 847 acres of pristine land that I'd never known we owned. Grandpa had always told me it was sold off years ago to pay debts. Another lie to protect the secret. The cloth bags contained gold coins, real gold, dated from the 1920s. A note was attached. From Rose's daddy, for emergencies. There are no emergencies worth breaking the trust early. Ted. Emma? Robert's voice was barely a whisper. Is this real? I looked at him, this man who'd had to foreclose on my family home, who'd thought he was dealing with another sad story of poverty and loss. Every bit of it. But the foreclosure, your grandfather's debts, were real, I finished. He chose them, chose to lose everything rather than touch this. I gathered the documents carefully. I need to make some withdrawals, and I need a lawyer, not from Morrison's firm. Robert nodded slowly, still in shock. My brother-in-law is a property lawyer in the city, Marcus Chen. He's excellent and has no connection to the Morrisons. Call him. Tell him I need him here today. While Robert made the call, I walked to the courthouse. Martha, the records clerk, was indeed expecting me. She was ancient, probably should have retired a decade ago, but she looked at me with sharp, knowing eyes. "Ted's granddaughter," she said. It wasn't a question. "He said you'd come eventually. Box 47? She led me to a back room I didn't know existed, pulled out a filing box that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside were the original land deeds, the mineral rights documentation, and something I hadn't expected, a file on Morrison Industries. "Your grandfather asked me to keep this," Martha said quietly. "Copies of every land deal Morrison Industries made around Blackstone Ridge, every threat, every attempt to force sales, every dirty trick." The file was thick. Victoria Morrison had been trying to box in the Blackstone property for 20 years, buying every adjacent plot, trying to landlock it, to make it worthless for development. She'd suspected something was there, but could never prove it. There were also records of her harassment, not just of my family, but of 3 other families who'd owned land near Blackstone. The Petersons, who'd lost their farm after their mortgage was mysteriously sold to Morrison's bank and immediately called in. The Changs, who'd been forced to sell after a Morrison development accidentally diverted water away from their property. The Wilsons, whose son had been arrested on false charges that were dropped the day after they sold. "She's a piece of work, that one," Martha said. "Your grandfather knew she'd come after you eventually. That's why he waited. That's why he let things get so bad. He knew you'd need to be unbreakable when the time came." "Are you?" I thought about the last 3 years. The humiliation, the exhaustion, the loss. Working for people who despised me. Losing David to his mother's prejudice. Watching my home being sold piece by piece. And through it all, I'd survived. I'd more than survived. I'd discovered exactly who I was when everything was stripped away. "Yes," I said, "I am." Marcus Chen arrived at the bank within 2 hours, a sharp-dressed man in his 40s who took one look at the documents and whistled low. "This is significant," he said, understating the century. "The trust is ironclad. Your grandfather was smart. He used Morrison's own law firm to set it up, which means they validated it. They can't challenge their own work. The mineral rights are yours, clear and free. The accumulated royalties are yours. The land itself is still in foreclosure," I finished. "For now." He smiled. "But with these resources, we can stop that immediately. Pay off the entire debt today if you want. Or," his smile turned sharp, "we could let it proceed and buy the property back at auction for pennies on the dollar. Poetic justice, considering what Victoria Morrison has been doing to families around here. She made me an offer today, $20,000 for my cooperation in transferring the Blackstone property to her after the bank takes it." Marcus's eyes gleamed. "Did she now? That's interesting, legally interesting. If she's making offers based on inside knowledge of the property's value, that could be construed as fraud, especially if she's been using her influence to ensure the foreclosure." He pulled out his phone, made a quick call. "Janet, Marcus Chen. I'm representing Emma Hartley." "Yes, that Emma." "No. I'm calling to inform you that any attempt by Morrison Industries to acquire the Blackstone Ridge property or any associated rights will be met with immediate legal action." "Yes, you should probably tell Mrs. Morrison." "No, I'm not joking. Check the county records if you don't believe me. That's right, box 47. He hung up, grinning. That should stir the pot. "Now, let's talk strategy." We spent the next 3 hours planning. Marcus was brilliant, seeing angles I'd never considered. We wouldn't just stop the foreclosure, we'd expose Victoria's entire scheme. The families she'd destroyed, the lies she'd told, the corruption she'd wielded like a weapon. "She's going to come at you hard," he warned. "The moment she realizes what you have, she'll try everything. Intimidation, bribes, maybe even violence. You need to be ready." "I've been ready for 3 years," I said. "I just didn't know what I was ready for." That night, I stayed at a hotel, my first night not in the house since I was 8. The briefcase sat on the bed beside me, looking impossibly ordinary for something that had changed everything. I pulled out Grandpa's journal again, reading entries I'd skipped earlier. Entry 201, August 8, 2010. Emma came home crying today. That Morrison boy broke up with her the first time. His mother's doing, no doubt. Emma thinks it's because she's not good enough. If only she knew the truth. She's worth 100 of them. Rose says I should tell her about the money. Says it's cruel to let her suffer. Maybe she's right. But I see how strong our girl is becoming. Every challenge, she rises to meet it. She's becoming the woman her parents would have been proud of. Entry 289, November 15th, 2020. The dementia is starting. I can feel it, like fog creeping in at the edges. Some days I forget where I put my keys, but I never forget the secret. It's like it's burned into my brain, the one thing that won't fade. Emma dropped out of college to take care of me. I wanted to tell her not to, that she didn't need to sacrifice for me, but the words wouldn't come. The truth was locked behind 50 years of silence, and I couldn't break it. Not yet. Not until it was time. She deserves so much more than she's gotten, but maybe that's the point. Maybe she needed to know what it feels like to have nothing, to be nobody in the world's eyes, so that when the time comes, she'll remember who she really is inside. A knock at my hotel door interrupted my reading. I looked through the peephole. David stood in the hallway, looking haggard. I debated not opening it, but curiosity won. "Emma." He looked relieved when I opened the door. "I've been looking everywhere for you. The house, I saw the auction." "What do you want, David?" He flinched at my tone. "Mom called me, said something about you having lawyers, about Blackstone Ridge. She's losing it, Emma. I've never seen her like this. What's going on?" I studied him. 3 years we'd been together, and I'd never really seen him clearly until now. Weak chin, soft hands, eyes that never quite met mine directly. He wasn't evil like his mother. He was just empty, waiting for someone stronger to fill him with purpose. "Your mother has been trying to steal my family's property for 20 years, I said simply. "She failed." "That's not, Mom wouldn't." But even he couldn't finish the lie. He knew exactly what his mother was capable of. "Emma, please, whatever you're planning, we can work this out. We could try again. Us, I mean." The proposal I'd once dreamed of, delivered in a hotel hallway, out of desperation and fear. I almost laughed. "No, David, we couldn't. I loved you," he said. And for once, I think he meant it. Mom said you were dragging me down, said you'd never amount to anything, that you were using me. She showed me reports from Janet about your performance at work and falsified reports, I interrupted, from your mother's best friend, and you believed them over me. His face crumpled. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. But Emma, if you have what Mom thinks you have, she won't stop. She'll destroy you. She has connections, influence." "She has fear," I corrected. "For the first time in her life, Victoria Morrison is afraid. And she should be." I closed the door on him, on us, on 3 years of accepting less than I deserved. Through the door, I heard him plead for a few more minutes before his footsteps faded away. The next morning came fast. I met Marcus at the courthouse at 8 a.m. sharp. He'd brought reinforcements, 2 other lawyers, a forensic accountant, and surprisingly, a detective from the State Police Fraud Division. Detective Sarah Kim. the woman introduced herself. Mr. Chen sent us some interesting information about Morrison Industries last night. We've been investigating them for 2 years, but we've never had an insider willing to talk. The families they destroyed were too frightened. I'm not an insider, I said. No, she agreed. You're something better. You're proof that they went after the wrong family. At 9 a.m., we filed the papers to stop the foreclosure. By 9:30, we'd submitted claims for the full value of the Blackstone Trust. By 10 a.m., Victoria Morrison knew her world was ending. She arrived at the courthouse at 10:47, according to the security cameras Marcus later showed me. Hair slightly mussed, lipstick not quite perfect, the first time I'd ever seen her less than immaculate. She had 3 lawyers with her, all looking grim. "Where is she?" Victoria's voice carried down the hallway. "Where is that little—" "Mrs. Morrison." Marcus stepped out of the records room, calm and professional. "I'm Emma Hartley's attorney. Any communication needs to go through me." "This is ridiculous," she spat. "That property is worthless farmland. The mineral rights were sold off decades ago." "Were they?" Marcus pulled out a document. "Because I have the original deed here, showing they were never sold. In fact, they were placed in trust in 1973. By your father-in-law's firm, actually. You should have records of it." The color drained from Victoria's face. "That's impossible. I would have known—" "Would you? Your father-in-law died before you married into the family. Your husband never practiced law, went straight into real estate. The only person who would have known was Charles Morrison Sr., and he took that secret to his grave. Well, him and Theodore Hartley. That senile old man? He couldn't even remember his own name." "No," I said, stepping out from behind Marcus. "But he remembered what mattered. He remembered that you tried to destroy our family. He remembered every threat, every dirty trick, every family you stepped on to build your empire." Victoria's perfectly painted lips twisted into an ugly sneer. "You can't prove anything." Detective Kim chose that moment to appear. "Actually, we can. Mr. Hartley kept excellent records, and it seems he wasn't the only one. The Petersons, the Changs, the Wilsons, they're all willing to testify now that they know they're not alone." "This is harassment," one of Victoria's lawyers said. "We'll sue—" "Go ahead," Marcus said cheerfully. "Discovery should be fascinating. 50 years of Morrison Industries business records, all open for examination. I'm particularly interested in the account that's been paying Janet Brooks a little extra every month. Keeping a hostile work environment is one thing, but falsifying employee records? That's criminal." Victoria turned to me, and for a moment the mask slipped completely. I saw the real woman underneath, small, vicious, terrified of losing control. "What do you want?" she asked. "Justice," I said simply. "For every family you destroyed, for every person you stepped on, for 3 years of making me feel worthless because I didn't have money or connections. Everyone has a price," she said desperately. "Name it. 50 million? 100? You can have David back. I'll make him marry you." "Your son already came crawling back last night," I said, watching her flinch. "I didn't want him then, and I don't want him now. And as for money?" I pulled out the account statement showing the trust value. "I have more than enough." She stared at the number, swaying slightly. 300 million in mineral rights, 47 million in accumulated royalties. And that was just the beginning. "This isn't over," she whispered. "Yes," I said firmly, "it is." The next 3 days passed in a blur of legal filings and phone calls. Marcus worked 18-hour days, building an airtight case against Morrison Industries. The state police opened a formal investigation. The families Victoria had destroyed over the years came forward, one by one, sharing their stories. The Petersons, who'd lost their farm and ended up living in a trailer park. The Changs, whose daughter had to drop out of medical school when they lost everything. The Wilsons, whose son still had PTSD from his false arrest. Each story was a weight on the scales of justice, tipping them further against Victoria. But the real bombshell came from Janet Brooks herself. She showed up at Marcus's office on day 3, looking like she hadn't slept in days. "I want immunity," she said without preamble. "I'll tell you everything, but I want immunity." Detective Kim handled the negotiations while I watched from another room. Janet looked older than her 53 years, gray roots showing through her usually perfect dye job. Victoria Morrison has been running a systematic campaign to acquire properties at below market value for 20 years, Janet began, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. She identifies valuable land, then uses every tool at her disposal to force sales. Financial pressure through her banking connections, legal pressure through frivolous lawsuits, personal pressure through harassment and intimidation. "And Emma Hartley?" Detective Kim asked. Janet's face crumpled slightly. Victoria knew there was something special about the Blackstone property. Her father-in-law had left notes, fragmentary things, suggesting mineral deposits. But the records were sealed, so she played the long game, pushed Emma and David together, hoping marriage would give her access. When Emma proved too independent, she switched tactics. The falsified performance reviews? "All of it documented on my personal computer," Janet said, pulling out a laptop. "Every email from Victoria, every altered document, every bonus I received for making Emma's life hell. I kept it all. Insurance, I guess." "Why?" I asked from the doorway, unable to stay silent. "Why did you do it?" Janet looked at me with hollow eyes. "My husband has ALS. Medical bills were crushing us. Victoria offered me money, a lot of money, to be her eyes and ears at the company. It started small, just keeping tabs on employees. Then it escalated. By the time I realized how deep I was in, it was too late to get out. I wanted to hate her. This woman who'd made my work life miserable, who'd contributed to my breakdown, who'd helped Victoria try to destroy me. But looking at her now, broken and desperate, I just felt tired. "Your husband," I said quietly. "How is he?" Janet's composure finally cracked. "Dying. Slowly. The treatments aren't working, and we're out of money anyway. Victoria cut me off when the investigation started." I looked at Detective Kim, then at Marcus. If she cooperates fully, if she testifies, her husband shouldn't suffer for her choices. Make sure the immunity deal includes protection of their assets for medical care. Janet stared at me. "Why would you, after everything Because I'm not Victoria Morrison," I said simply, "and I never will be." The news broke the next morning. Morrison Industries under federal investigation. The headlines were brutal, the details worse. By noon, 3 more families had come forward with stories of Victoria's tactics. By evening, Morrison Industries' stock had dropped 30%. David called 17 times. I didn't answer. Victoria tried to approach me outside the hotel, but Detective Kim had assigned protection after they'd intercepted some concerning communications. Apparently, Victoria had reached out to some fixers about their Emma problem. "She's desperate," Detective Kim told me. "Desperate people do stupid things. Stay vigilant." But I wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time in 3 years, maybe for the first time in my life, I felt powerful. Not because of the money, though that didn't hurt, but because I finally understood what Grandpa Ted had been trying to teach me all along. Real strength doesn't come from what you have. It comes from who you are when everything is stripped away. The auction for my childhood home was scheduled to continue despite the legal proceedings. I'd stopped the foreclosure, but some items had already been sold. I decided to attend, to buy back what mattered. The auctioneer looked shocked when I walked in with Marcus and a cashier's check for $200,000. "Ms. Hartley, I thought..." "I'm here to bid," I said simply. The crowd parted as I walked through. Some of the same neighbors who'd pretended not to know me days ago now whispered excitedly. News of the trust had spread through Millbrook like wildfire. "Emma," Mrs. Patterson from next door grabbed my arm. "Is it true about the mineral rights?" "It's true," I confirmed. "But your grandfather, he lived so modestly." "He lived the way he wanted to live," I said, "rich in everything that mattered." I bought back Grandma's rocking chair for 10 times what it had sold for. The buyer, an antique dealer from the city, tried to negotiate, but I just kept raising my bid until he gave up. I bought back the dining room table where we'd had 20 years of family dinners, the piano my mother had learned to play on, the grandfather clock that had belonged to Grandpa Ted's father, but the most important thing couldn't be bought back, the feeling of home. That had been destroyed the moment I'd been forced to leave. These were just things now, artifacts of a life that no longer existed. "What will you do with it all?" Marcus asked as we arranged for delivery to a storage unit. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "Maybe donate them to the Historical Society. Grandpa would like that, keeping Millbrook's history alive." As we were leaving, Aunt Patricia appeared, practically running in her designer heels. "Emma, darling, I heard the wonderful news." The woman who'd called me a failure a week ago now looked at me with dollar signs in her eyes. "Aunt Patricia?" I said coolly. "I was just thinking, family should stick together in times like these. I know we've had our differences, but you took Mom's jewelry," I interrupted. "The pearl necklace Grandma gave her for her wedding, Dad's watch, everything that mattered to me, you took while calling me a failure." Her face flushed. "I was safe keeping them, for the family. Then you won't mind returning them. Today. Some of them might have been sold. Then you'll buy them back. Or I'll have Marcus add theft to the list of charges being filed." I turned to Marcus. "Can we do that?" "Absolutely," he said cheerfully. "Theft of estate property, fraud, elder abuse if she took them while your grandfather was suffering from dementia." "They're in my car," Aunt Patricia said quickly. "I'll get them right now." She practically ran to her BMW, returning with 2 shopping bags full of hastily wrapped items. I looked through them. Mom's pearls, Dad's watch, Grandma's silver, even the photo albums she'd claimed were too damaged to keep. "Is this everything?" "Yes, I swear." I studied her for a long moment. This woman who'd made my childhood harder after my parents died, who'd treated me like a burden at every family gathering, who'd swooped in like a vulture the moment Grandpa died. "We're done," I said finally. "You're not my family anymore. Don't contact me, don't approach me, don't even speak my name. You don't exist to me. You can't. I'm your mother's sister. My mother would be ashamed of you," I said quietly. "And so am I." I walked away, leaving her sobbing in the parking lot. Not from genuine emotion, I was sure, but from the loss of potential money. That evening, I sat in my hotel room, surrounded by the recovered family items. Mom's pearls caught the light, and I remembered her wearing them to church every Sunday. Dad's watch still kept perfect time, its steady ticking a reminder that life goes on, even after loss. A knock at the door interrupted my memories. Through the peephole, I saw an elderly man in an expensive suit, holding a cane. "Miss Hartley? My name is Charles Morrison III, David's father. I wondered if we might speak." I'd never actually met David's father. He'd been in Europe for most of our relationship, letting Victoria run the company while he pursued his art collecting. I opened the door cautiously. "Mr. Morrison." He was nothing like I'd expected. Where Victoria was sharp edges and cold calculation, he seemed tired and sad. "May I come in?" "I promise I'm not here on Victoria's behalf. Quite the opposite, actually." Curiosity won. I let him in, noting how he walked with genuine difficulty, not the affected frailty some rich people adopted for sympathy. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble, settling into a chair with obvious relief. "I've been a coward for 30 years, letting Victoria run roughshod over people while I hid in Europe, pretending I didn't know what she was doing." "You knew?" "Of course I knew. Everyone knew. But she was so good at making money, at building the empire, that we all looked the other way, even when she went after your family." He pulled out an old photograph. "This was your grandfather and my father back in 1973. The photo showed 2 young men in suits, shaking hands in front of the courthouse. Grandpa Ted looked so young, so hopeful. They were friends, Charles continued. My father helped set up the trust, not just as a lawyer, but as a friend. He believed your grandfather was doing the right thing, protecting his family from the curse of sudden wealth. Some curse, I said bitterly. You'd be surprised. I've seen what inherited wealth does to people. My son, for instance. David's never had to work for anything, fight for anything, believe in anything. He's 30 years old and still a child, waiting for his mother to tell him what to do. Why are you telling me this? Charles sighed. Because I'm dying. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, 3 months, maybe 6. And I don't want to die knowing I let Victoria destroy everything my father built. Not the money, the reputation, the integrity, the honor of the Morrison name. He pulled out a thick envelope. I'm filing for divorce. It won't be final before I die, but it'll tie up her assets, prevent her from hiding money offshore. This is also a signed affidavit detailing everything I know about her illegal activities over the years. Things even Janet doesn't know about. I took the envelope, feeling its weight. This could destroy her completely. Good, he said firmly. She destroyed plenty of others, your family most of all. He stood with difficulty. I also wanted to tell you something about your grandfather. The last time I saw him, about a year ago, he was having one of his clear days. He knew I was Charles's son, knew about Victoria, knew about you and David. What did he say? He said, Emma will be fine. She's got her grandmother's spine and her mother's heart. She doesn't need your boy or your money. But one day, your family is going to need her forgiveness. Try to deserve it. Charles moved toward the door, then paused. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway. Can you forgive an old coward for not protecting you when he should have? I thought about Grandpa Ted, about the choices he'd made, about strength and forgiveness and the weight of secrets. I can forgive a dying man who's trying to make things right, I said finally. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. No, he agreed. It doesn't. Good luck, Miss Hartley. You're going to do great things with that fortune, greater than we ever did. After he left, I called Marcus. We need to talk about what comes next, not the legal stuff, the after. What do I do with $300 million? Whatever you want, he said. That's the point. But that wasn't good enough. Grandpa Ted had hidden this money for 50 years rather than let it corrupt our family. I couldn't just become another wealthy person stepping on others to build an empire. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the Petersons in their trailer park, the Changs whose daughter had to abandon her dreams, the Wilsons still dealing with trauma. Money could help them, but it couldn't undo the past. Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and started writing. A business plan, or maybe a mission statement. The Hartley Foundation, dedicated to helping families destroyed by predatory business practices. Free legal aid, financial counseling, emergency funds, scholarship programs. Everything people needed to fight back against the Victoria Morrisons of the world. By dawn, I had 30 pages of notes. By the time Marcus's office opened, I was ready. I want to use the Morrison settlement to fund this, I said, showing him the plans. Every penny Victoria pays in damages goes to helping her victims. Marcus grinned. Poetic justice. I love it. The legal proceedings took another 2 weeks. Victoria fought every step, but the evidence was overwhelming. Janet's testimony was devastating. Charles's affidavit was the killing blow. The federal investigators found offshore accounts, tax evasion, bribery of public officials. The day Victoria Morrison was arrested was the day I finally went back to the house, my house, free and clear of all debt. It looked different in the morning light, smaller somehow, but still home. The auction company had left it empty, just walls and floors and memories. I walked through each room, remembering. The kitchen where Grandma taught me to make pie crust, the living room where Grandpa read me stories, my parents' room which had become mine, where I'd cried myself to sleep for months after they died. In the attic, I found Grandma's wedding dress, still in its box, behind where the briefcase had been hidden. A note was pinned to it in Grandpa's shaking handwriting. "For Emma, when the time is right." I sat on the dusty floor and cried. Not from sadness, but from the weight of being loved so much that someone would sacrifice everything to protect you. Grandpa Ted had given up comfort, medical care, his own pride, all to ensure I grew up strong enough to handle what was coming. "Thank you," I whispered to the empty room. "Thank you for believing in me." My phone rang. Detective Kim. "Emma, Victoria made bail. She's not supposed to contact you, but I know. She'll try anyway. We have a unit watching your house. Be careful." But Victoria didn't come to the house. She went to the cemetery, to Grandpa Ted's grave. I found her there that evening, standing in her jail-rumpled clothes, looking like a stranger. "He won," she said without turning around. "A postal worker, a nobody. He beat me." "He didn't beat you," I said. "He never even played your game. That's what you can't understand. He had everything you wanted, and he chose love over money, family over fortune, integrity over empire." She turned to face me, and I saw something broken in her eyes. "I have nothing now. David won't speak to me. Charles filed for divorce. The company is gone. Everything I built, everything I worked for." "Everything you stole," I corrected. "I earned it." The old fire flickered briefly. "I came from nothing. My father was a drunk who couldn't keep a job. My mother cleaned houses for people like the Morrisons. I swore I'd never be poor again, never be powerless." "So you became the monster you were running from," I said. "You became the person who made others feel powerless." She deflated again. "What happens now?" "You face justice. You pay for what you've done. And maybe if you're capable of it, you learn something. Prison." She said it like she was testing the word. "I'm going to prison." "Probably." "Your grandfather would have forgiven me," she said desperately. "He was that kind of man." "No," I said firmly. "He wouldn't have. Grandpa Ted believed in redemption, but he also believed in consequences. He'd tell you to take your punishment, make amends where you could, and try to become better. But forgiveness, that would have to be earned." I left her there, standing among the headstones, finally as alone as she'd made others feel. The trial lasted 3 months. Victoria got 15 years, eligible for parole and 7 with good behavior. Morrison Industries was dissolved, its assets distributed among the victims. David moved to California, started over with a new name, trying to escape his mother's shadow. Janet Brooks testified brilliantly, her immunity agreement protecting her as she laid out 20 years of corruption. Her husband passed away during the trial, but she said he died knowing she'd finally done the right thing. The Hartley Foundation launched 6 months later. We helped the Petersons buy a new farm, better than the one they'd lost. The Chang's daughter went back to medical school with a full scholarship. The Wilson's son got the therapy he needed and eventually became a counselor himself, helping other victims of false prosecution. But the best moment came a year later, on the anniversary of finding the briefcase. I was in the house, fully restored now, filled with a mix of recovered family pieces and new memories. The doorbell rang, and I found a young woman on my porch, maybe 19, holding a baby. "Ms. Hartley, I'm Sarah Chen. You don't know me, but you saved my family." I invited her in, confused. The name wasn't familiar from any of our cases. "My father worked at Morrison Industries," she explained. "Middle management. When everything came out, he thought he'd lose everything. But you made sure the regular employees were protected, got their pensions, helped them find new jobs. You didn't have to do that." "Everyone deserves a second chance," I said. "He wanted me to give you this." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a simple thank you card, signed by dozens of former Morrison employees. "You could have been vindictive, could have destroyed everyone connected to that company, but you didn't. You separated the victims from the villains." After she left, I sat in Grandma's rocking chair, the one I'd bought back at 10 times its value, and read every signature. These weren't wealthy people or important people. They were just people trying to make a living who'd gotten caught up in Victoria's web. This was what Grandpa Ted had really left me. Not just money, but the chance to choose who I wanted to be when I had power. The chance to lift others up instead of stepping on them. The doorbell rang. Again. This time it was Marcus, grinning and holding champagne. "What are we celebrating?" I asked. The final settlement just came through. Victoria's hidden offshore accounts. We got them all. Another $50 million for the foundation. "That's wonderful, but..." "And," he continued, "I have someone I want you to meet." He stepped aside, revealing a young man about my age. "This is my associate, James Park. He's been handling the scholarship program, and he has a proposal for you." James was nothing like David, shorter, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and calloused hands that suggested he hadn't always worked in an office. "Ms. Hartley, I've identified 17 families in situations similar to what yours was: underwater mortgages due to medical debt, predatory lending, or job loss. With your approval, I'd like to create an emergency intervention program." "Tell me more," I said, inviting them both in. We talked for hours. James had grown up poor, worked construction to put himself through law school, understood what it was like to be powerless against systemic inequality. His passion was genuine, his ideas brilliant. "The trick," he said, eyes lighting up, "is to catch families before they hit rock bottom, before the Victoria Morrisons of the world can swoop in." "Like guardian angels," I said. "Exactly. Your grandfather was watching over you even when you didn't know it. We could do that for others." Marcus excused himself around midnight, but James and I kept talking about the foundation, about justice, about second chances, about everything except the obvious connection between us. Finally, at 2 a.m., he stood to leave. "I should go. Thank you for listening, Miss Hartley." "Emma," I corrected. "Call me Emma." He smiled, and something in my chest fluttered for the first time in over a year. "Emma, I'll have the full proposal ready by Monday." "James," I called as he reached the door, "would you like to have dinner sometime?" "To discuss the foundation, of course." His smile widened. "Of course, to discuss the foundation." 6 months later, we were discussing more than the foundation. A year later, he proposed in the cemetery right in front of Grandpa Ted's grave, saying he wanted to ask permission from the man who'd protected me all those years. "He would have liked you," I said through tears. "You work with your hands and your mind. You know the value of money without being corrupted by it. You see me, not my bank account." "I see you," he agreed. The woman who forgave when she could have destroyed, who helped when she could have hoarded, who became exactly who her grandfather knew she could be. We married the following spring in the backyard of the house on Willow Lane. The Petersons came, and the Changs, and the Wilsons. Janet Brooks was there, running a nonprofit now, helping families with medical debt. Even Martha from the courthouse attended, still sharp at 91. Charles Morrison III sent a gift from his hospice, a photograph of our grandfathers, young and hopeful, shaking hands on a deal that would take 50 years to mature. His note read, "They knew what they were doing, trust well placed, patience well rewarded." He died 2 days later, finally at peace. David sent a letter, not asking for anything, just apologizing, saying he understood now what he'd lost, and it wasn't the money. It was the chance to be with someone who would have loved him despite his weakness, who might have helped him become stronger. I wrote back, wishing him well, meaning it. Victoria sent nothing, said nothing. She served her full 15 years, never expressing remorse, never admitting wrongdoing. She died in prison, alone, still wealthy in the only currency that had ever mattered to her, pride. But that was all in the future. That night, standing in my wedding dress, Grandma's altered to fit, I danced with my husband in the house my grandfather had protected, surrounded by people who'd learned that love is stronger than greed, that patience beats haste, that sometimes the best inheritance isn't money, but the strength to earn your own happiness. The band played old songs, the ones Grandpa Ted had hummed while delivering mail. Mrs. Patterson from next door, now 85, told stories about my grandparents' early days, how they'd been so in love, it made the whole neighborhood smile. "Your grandfather," she said, tapping her champagne glass. "He knew something most people don't. Money is just paper and numbers. But love, family, the choice to do right even when wrong would be easier, that's wealth that compounds forever." As the evening wound down, James and I walked through the house, now filled with laughter and light. In the attic, where the briefcase had waited all those years, we'd created a small museum of sorts. The original trust documents, Grandpa's journal, the photos of our grandfathers. "Do you ever wonder," James asked, "what would have happened if your grandfather had just told you about the money from the beginning?" I thought about it, really thought about it. I would have been different. Maybe not bad, but different. I wouldn't have known what it felt like to be powerless. So I wouldn't have understood the power of helping others. I wouldn't have learned to fight, so I wouldn't have known when fighting was necessary. I wouldn't have lost everything, so I wouldn't have known what was really important. He was a wise man. He was. But more than that, he was brave. It takes incredible courage to watch someone you love suffer, knowing you could stop it, but choosing their long-term strength over their short-term comfort. We stood there, in the spot where my life had changed, where a dusty briefcase had held the answer to prayers I'd been too defeated to pray. "What do you think he'd say now?" James asked. "If he could see all this?" I smiled, hearing Grandpa's voice in my memory, clear as if he were standing beside me. He'd say, "Emma Bear, you did good. Now stop dwelling on the past and go make the future." And that's what we did. The Hartley Foundation grew beyond anything I'd imagined. We helped hundreds of families avoid foreclosure, sent dozens of kids to college, funded free legal clinics in 5 states. We created a watchdog organization that monitored predatory lending practices, shut down 3 companies trying to be the next Morrison Industries. James and I had 3 children, Theodore, Rose, and Sarah, after my mother. We raised them in the house on Willow Lane, teaching them what Grandpa Ted had taught me, that money is a tool, not a goal. That strength comes from struggle. That love is the only wealth that matters. When little Teddy was 8, the same age I'd been when my parents died, he asked me why Grandpa Ted had kept the money secret for so long. I pulled out the journal, showed him the entries, the careful handwriting of a man planning for a future he wouldn't see. Because, I told him, he loved me more than money. He wanted me to become who I was meant to be, not who money would make me. He knew that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to save themselves. Teddy thought about this with the seriousness only an 8-year-old can muster. "That's why you help people, isn't it? Not just with money, but with chances?" "Yes," I said, hugging him close. "That's exactly why." 20 years have passed since that day on the porch, when a briefcase changed everything. The house on Willow Lane still stands, now with a plaque designating it as a historical site. The Hartley Foundation has helped over 10,000 families. Morrison Industries is just a cautionary tale told in business schools. But the real legacy isn't in numbers or buildings, or even the families saved. It's in the lesson Grandpa Ted taught through his patience, his sacrifice, his incredible faith in a granddaughter he barely got to see grow up. The lesson is this: true wealth isn't what you have, but what you choose to do with it. True strength isn't never falling, but always getting back up. True love isn't giving someone everything they want, but helping them become everything they can be. I think about the woman I was at 23, broken, defeated, sitting on porch steps watching my life be auctioned away. I wish I could tell her what was coming, but then I realize that's exactly what Grandpa Ted could have done, and chose not to, because he knew something I'm only now beginning to understand. The journey from nothing to everything isn't about the destination. It's about who you become along the way. And who did I become? I became a woman who knows that rock bottom is just a foundation to build on, who understands that enemies can become teachers if you let them, who learned that forgiveness is not weakness, but strength, who discovered that the best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you, but becoming someone they could never be. I became Grandpa Ted's Emma Bear, carrying forward his legacy of quiet strength and patient love. Last week, I got a call from a young woman in Ohio. Her grandfather had just died, leaving her with nothing but debt and a mysterious key. She'd heard about the Hartley Foundation, wondered if we could help. "Tell me about your grandfather," I said. "Everyone thought he was just a janitor," she said, voice breaking. "But he was so much more. He was wise and kind and always said I was destined for great things, even when I couldn't see it myself." "And the key?" "I don't know. It's old, brass, with the number 82 engraved on it. The lawyer said Grandpa left instructions that I wasn't to use it until I truly needed it." I smiled, remembering another brass key, another number, another grandfather's faith. "Bring the key. Come to Millbrook. Let's find out what your grandfather left you." She arrived yesterday, 24 years old, exhausted, defeated, sure the key led to nothing but more disappointment. I recognized the look. I'd worn it myself. We went to the bank together. Box 82 was in the old vault, just like Box 47 had been. Inside were documents for a patent her grandfather had filed 40 years ago, never developed, now worth millions in the age of green technology. She cried. I held her, and then I told her about Grandpa Ted, about briefcases and secrets and the long game of love. "But why?" she asked. "Why didn't he use it himself?" "Because," I said, "he was investing in something more valuable than money. He was investing in you, in the person you'd become through struggle, in the strength you'd develop through hardship, in the compassion you'd learn through suffering. How do you know?" I pulled out my phone, showed her a photo of Grandpa Ted. "Because that's what love does. It plays the long game. It chooses future strength over present comfort. It believes in you even when you don't believe in yourself." She's staying in Millbrook for a while, working with the foundation, learning how to use her inheritance wisely. James is helping her understand the patent, its potential, the responsibility that comes with sudden wealth. And me? I'm sitting in Grandma's rocking chair, writing this story, thinking about cycles and generations and the way love echoes through time. Grandpa Ted has been gone for 3 years now, but I still feel him everywhere, in the morning light through the kitchen windows he installed, in the creak of the floorboards he laid, in the whisper of wind through the trees he planted. Most of all, I feel him in the moments when I choose patience over immediate gratification, kindness over justified anger, hope over cynicism. He's in every check the foundation writes, every family we save, every young person who discovers they're worth more than their current circumstances suggest. The briefcase sits in our family museum now. It's leather-worn smooth by all the people who come to touch it, to understand that sometimes salvation comes in unexpected packages, at the darkest moments, from sources we never suspected. School groups come through regularly. I tell them the story, watch their faces change as they realize that the shabby old briefcase held not just money, but a love so deep it could wait 50 years to bloom. "But what if he died before the trust matured?" one student asked recently. "What if you'd never found out?" "Then I would have lived my whole life being loved that much," I answered. Being believed in that deeply. And maybe that would have been enough. But of course, Grandpa Ted had planned better than that. He'd known somehow that he'd lived just long enough, that the briefcase would be found at exactly the right moment, that his Emma Bear would be ready for the responsibility only after she'd learned its weight. The Morrison estate, what's left of it, went up for sale last month. One of Victoria's former victims bought it, planning to turn it into a shelter for families facing foreclosure. Poetic justice, Marcus called it. I call it the long arc of justice bending toward hope. David reached out again last week. He's married now, works as a teacher in an inner-city school in Los Angeles. He sent a photo of his classroom, filled with kids who look like they're carrying the world on their small shoulders. "I tell them about you sometimes," his letter said, "about how you rose from nothing, about how you chose forgiveness over revenge, about how real strength isn't about never falling, but always getting back up. They need to hear stories like yours. Thank you for becoming someone worth teaching about." I wrote back, sending books for his classroom, setting up a scholarship fund for his students. Not for him, but for those kids who need to know that rock bottom isn't the end of the story, because that's what Grandpa Ted taught me in the end. That every ending is just a beginning waiting to be discovered, that every loss carries the seed of future gain. That love, real love, doesn't save you from hardship, but gives you the strength to transform it into wisdom. The sun is setting now over Millbrook, painting the sky the same pink it was that day on the porch when everything changed. James is in the garden with the children, their laughter floating through the windows. Somewhere, that young woman from Ohio is opening her grandfather's patent documents, discovering her own inheritance of love and possibility. And I'm here in this house that has seen so much loss and so much redemption, thinking about briefcases and keys and the long patience of love. Thank you, Grandpa Ted. Thank you for seeing who I could become long before I could see it myself. Thank you for choosing my strength over my comfort. Thank you for the briefcase that held not just money, but the chance to discover who I really am. Thank you for teaching me that. Sometimes the greatest love looks like loss. The greatest gift comes wrapped in struggle, and the greatest inheritance isn't what someone leaves you, but what they help you become. Your Emma Bear did good, just like you knew she would. End.